On this episode of the show, I have with me Matt McLarty. He is CTO at Boomi, and we're going to be talking about enterprise AI adoption. We're going to talk about some of the companies that are succeeding and why, some that might not be and why that is. And really, we haven't seen this big of a shift in technology for a long time. Maybe cloud, and maybe we could talk to Matt about that. And a lot of companies are going through the POC cycle hoping for adoption. It's a big gap if you are not ready. And we'll talk to him also a little bit about what happens if you were to have just waited. Like, is that even an option these days to just hold and see how the market matures? Matt, I'm super excited to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. CTO at Boomi, if you could tell us what Boomi does before we dive in, that'd be great.
Boomi is a platform that is at the core of organizations and helps them connect their applications and drive automation. And in the context of AI, really helps you orchestrate generative AI to connect it to the core of your business.
Absolutely. So, I love the concept, the discussion around enterprise AI adoption. I guess before we dive in, I guess it'd be interesting to understand where we're at within the cycle of AI projects. And what I mean is, it's been around now for a little bit. People have at some point started doing POCs. Some have gone live, some have not. I mean, there's a whole area we'll talk about is in the maturity curve of this technology. I mean, it feels we're very early, but I'm just kind of curious to set the stage. Where are we on that curve?
Great question. You said off the top that we're, this is one of the most disruptive changes. I think it's definitely more overwhelming than cloud or mobile. Probably have to go back to the web. And even there, it's hard to tell. I mean, we know what the impact of the web is now and how pervasive it is. But because of that, I think that we're used to like the hype cycle happening for new technologies. And Gartner has the hype cycle curve it's not to scale. Right? Like for some, every technology follows the hype cycle. AI is like the Mount Everest of hype cycles, I think. So we're at a really weird place where innovation is happening at light speed. Hype has never been higher, but organizations they're really struggling to adopt it in a meaningful way, not for lack of trying. Like there's a lot of consternation. There's a lot of concern and risk aversion, but that seems to be overwhelmed by the hype. And there seems to be this FOMO factor that's really driving companies to jump headfirst into this new technology in a little more risk, damn the torpedoes way than they might have with other technology curves. So it's a strange place. I think we're just now starting to see organizations like the smoke is clearing a bit and starting to see some examples of like practical wins. I'm not even sure if we're at the place yet where we can see the patterns emerge, but there still is this air of inevitability of it all. Like we know how the reason there's so much hype is because there's legitimately mind-bending technology that's going to be put to use. People are still not so clear on how to use it and even how to get started with it.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll go backwards a little bit in chronology of what I said we'd cover. And I guess you mentioned other technology boom cycles, and I agree, the cloud, the web, mobile, all those had their place. I think AI definitely is viewed differently. Mm-hmm. It is also fast moving. I think it's just going at such a fast pace. And it feels like if you're a technology leader, you're hearing about something new every day, and your stakeholders, the board, see it's so pervasive that you can't almost get away from hearing about the excitement around it. Previously, this was reserved for the cutting edge, the startups, the big tech in Silicon Valley who wanted to venture into all this tech to see, hey, what am I going to do with it? Let engineers play with it. Not necessarily for the enterprise. Mm-hmm. I guess when you look at this and you look at the pressures that everyone is under because so many people are hearing it. I don't think a lot of people are hearing cloud and going, executive boards and stakeholders going, oh my God, what are you doing with the cloud? Like, are you on the cloud? I mean, that probably wasn't happening. But how are people dealing with this just intense conversation that's happening? It seems like daily everywhere.
Yeah. It's this is why it's just so unique. It's hard to compare it to a previous innovations. Like cloud was very much an infrastructure kind of thing, and it was funny at the time. I remember watching like Microsoft ads talking about in the cloud and things like it was trying to hit the consumers with that message. People were like, "What are you even talking about?" But this one, and this is different than something like blockchain. I always tend to pick on blockchain, where it's like, hey, innovative technology, let's go find a problem to solve with it. Like I think what's happening is it's pretty obvious that AI can affect everything, like every aspect of work, like from daily tasks of any person doing their job to hardcore developers to fully automated systems that are unattended. Like all of that's possible, which is what makes it so hard to figure out where to start, because it's going to affect everything. So, it really is it's a tough one to pin down. And I think that's part of the issue that companies are finding is like, what do we focus on first? And so that's a lot of the time we spend working with organizations to say, like, first of all, you should not be ignoring this. Like you can't plug your ears and close your eyes and say, la, 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 it's going to go away. But at the same time, there is a risk of jumping in too quickly or jumping on the wrong AI train, because there's a lot of them. So there's no way around this being a difficult place for organizations to be, despite all the excitement.
And I guess if you're looking with the excitement, and there are companies, obviously, we mentioned, we talked about the AI maturity curve, and obviously the hype cycle and the hype curve and all that. And there's also a technology maturity curve companies on. I joked, I still hear about the phrase digital transformation of people still moving to the cloud, which is fine. Everyone does things at their own pace, but we still talk about reporting. We talk about the blocking and tackling, the basics in technology isn't right. If you're an organization and you're out there and you are looking at this technology and you're like, I can see the compelling opportunities, you need to somehow bridge the gap from where you're at. And again, I'm sure there are Fortune 1000 companies that have brought in the machine learning data engineers. They're doing all this advanced stuff. But if you're not that company, how do you start looking at finding the right use case, finding the right project, finding the right pilot for a company?
That is such an important point, because we're all sort of looking consistently at this horizon, but we're all looking at it from vastly different points on the globe or the universe, wherever we are. And you're right. I think one of the big risk factors, pitfalls, is this assumption that, well, AI is the new thing. So all that stuff we were doing before, we don't have to do that now. We'll just jump on the AI train, like the digital transformation, all that work. Even though digital transformation, which was such a hype term 3 years ago, maybe is out of fashion now. Like all the things that companies were doing there around digitizing and moving core operations and all the goodness that came out of that is really foundational for AI. Like you're not going to go from being a company that is faxing information between departments to all of a sudden being a fully autonomous AI agent run business, because you have to build on top. Like technology works in layers. So I think that is actually step one, is an honest orientation of where your company is in order to adopt effectively. And even within organizations, like there's even what you think would be small organizations, they have a wide variance in technology adoption across companies. And so you mentioned the data science and the machine learning and all that. There are companies right now that are pretty advanced on that curve, and they will quickly move to AI initiatives and projects. But that's the problem. There is like the area where machine learning is most effective, still is most effective, and actually I would argue much more effective than Gen AI in a lot of ways for what it does, is very analytics focused, data, super hardcore data driven. It's a little bit removed almost from some of the other opportunities that are out there. So, when we work with organizations, we're seeing even the organizational construct can be a barrier to getting the quick wins. Like you might be better off using AI to do some very just slightly more sophisticated automation than you're doing today. But that automation that you're doing today is with a different team. And then you've got you're investing all your AI money over here trying to build this super complicated agentic solution, when meanwhile you can just get way more bang for the buck over here. So orientation around where you are, I guess, chronologically on the technology adoption curve, as well as where you are, how distributed you are organizationally. Those are really important parts because we know where we're going on the map. We're just not sure where we're starting from.
Absolutely. And when you look at the companies that are succeeding, the companies that are seeing some adoption, that are actually seeing some positive ROI. Actually, ROI could be a tricky word to use in this case, but seeing some positive use cases, and they're seeing some positive signs that, hey, this is working for us. Is it a case of narrow, go business focused first? Is it the technology team that should be lean? I mean, and the reason I'm asking this question is I think a lot of times, I think business is expecting technology to come in because they have been the holders of the technology solutions. Mm-hmm. Who is in successful adoption, successful launches? Who's leading that conversation?
I think it's a nuanced step, but I think there's an inversion that has to happen in order to kind of cross the chasm, which is the inversion of, it's not about AI, right? AI is not the end goal here. And as soon as you realize that, okay, AI is this new revolutionary thing, but from the perspective of business, it's another tool. It's another technology tool that we have. So getting away from, and look, I sympathize with companies because there's literally CEO level pressure at every company right now to get on board. Like the marketing around AI is very effective. Like they're literally board level. Hey, we're not doing enough AI stuff going on out there, so everyone's scrambling. But as soon as you invert it and say, no, we have this new technology, we have this new revolutionary capability, but we still have the same business problems that we had before. And then if you take that lens and if you look at it really as a sort of a force multiplier around, I talk about automation a lot because I think that in order to get to the AGI future and the autonomous future and everything, you have to go in steps. And I really think that what have we been primarily using technology systems to do for the last, since the Industrial Revolution, is really to automate more work, to drive more efficiency, productivity. And I think that's probably the biggest bucket to pull from. And when you do that, there is very simple steps that you can take using Gen AI. Like today, if you look at how organizations are automating things, a lot of times they have a very automated happy path for their processes. But once you stray off the happy path a little bit, you fall into a manual exception process, and then all of a sudden the productivity goes way down. So if you start to look at some of those branches off the happy path of your automations today and think about how a reasoning-based technology could help solve those and make them more efficient, like there's big wins there. And that's what we're seeing when organizations have that epiphany of, it's not about the AI, it's actually just another tool that we have. And they start to just zero in, like you said, focus on some of their core business problems. There's probably problems they've had for years that they haven't been able to solve with the current tool set. Now they've got a new tool and they can solve those problems.
I was joking with somebody that I at one point in my career was the quote unquote business systems analyst. And the task was to go back and find those Scrum eventually and economics eliminated all those roles. Like we don't need them anymore. I actually have been looking at this problem. I'm like, darn, I think this is going to be the role that comes back in vogue because we need now that translator of business workflow, old school stuff that, people probably now listening to this going, Amir, that hasn't been around for like 30 years. Hasn't been around for
it's like a lot of things, right? It goes under different names, but You're right in that the whole agile transformation sort of reconfigured things. But what's funny is that in spite of that, like things go the way they go and there was different silos forming here and there. And then DevOps kind of grows out of agile as, hey, you know what? Maybe the dev and ops people should be talking more and working together more effectively. And then there's sort of biz DevOps. There's fusion teams, Gartner calls it. There has been this organizational trend to be putting more cross-functional teams together of business and tech people. when you find the people who can understand both sides of that, I totally agree. Like the minds that can, I think there's sort of there's three legs to the stool here. It's understanding the business, understanding the technology, and then having a design mindset. Like that's gold when you find people with those skills, because they're going to be the ones who can identify the opportunity, know enough about the technology to do quick feasibility checks, and then have the design sense to put in a solution that's actually going to drive value either from an efficiency standpoint or a direct monetary standpoint. So yeah, I'm here for you. I agree.
I love it. I guess as we're talking, and you've gone through and kind of, we've been talking about adoption. It maybe actually step back, because, and I should have done this at the top of the show, but we'll do it now. Adoption to me seems like a very subjective term, right? And I think there's a moving target of what that word means, because again, everyone's at a different part of this process. But if we looked at adoption and we were to define it in a way so that we could bring some objectivity for people looking at their own roadmaps and their own problems, is there a definition? Is there a AI adoption that we could define that is broader than per organization, or is this really a per organization thing?
Yeah, no, this is not a Boolean value thing, right? This is a spectrum, and a multi-dimensional spectrum, right? So we talked about Agile briefly. To bring up sort of a fun example, I know of a bank who's wanted to adopt Agile, and so they removed chairs from the meeting rooms so that all the meetings were stand-up meetings. That's not good adoption. I'm sure they said, yeah, we adopted Agile. We do stand-up meetings now, right? You don't want that for AI. So I think that force-feeding an organization, like, hey, co-pilot everything, we got all the licenses for this thing and all of our staff are using this now. We've adopted AI. It really has to come down to business value metrics. And, if you're going to focus on productivity for your employees, then you better be able to measure the value that you're putting in there. If you're going to be measuring on automation levels and productivity, then you need to measure your sort of employee efficiency and cost savings. If you're going to, drive new revenue streams and so on. So I think it's important but I would even say again, like, is it really worth spending all that time creating new metrics that are just focused on AI? Or do we want to invert it and really think about, like, this is a tool. We have the metrics. We know how to measure our business. We can measure how much of an impact it's having initiative by initiative. But I do think that the one pattern I have seen emerging that I think is pretty useful is it does seem to be starting with sort of just daily task tool augmentation stuff that people are doing as a first step, and then internal focused productivity initiatives as a second step, and then people may go into the revenue generating customer facing initiatives once they get their feet wet. That's a pattern I've seen work okay. It doesn't have to be that way though, because I think the right organization who really has the epiphany early and says, we have a business initiative and we know how to harness AI for it. I don't think you have to wait until all your employees are using tools to do that either, but it's completely a multi-dimensional thing that is, it's not a box that you tick that say my company's adopted AI now.
Absolutely. I guess when we talk about AI adoption, and we've talked about, some companies are doing better than others and others have not necessarily succeeded. If you're in the boat where you've tried to launch some AI projects and POCs, and maybe it just hasn't resulted in what people go, oh, well, this is fantastic use of budget and fund. The adoption piece there is a little bit more complicated, because obviously somebody saw something that didn't deliver. There's already a lot of varying views of AI and going into production. If you're in a case where you've already tried going down the route and it hasn't worked, is there advice for people to be able to, take a step back and go back and reestablish what AI adoption is going to look like and be able to set better expectations?
Yeah, I think because things are moving so quickly, I think we have to give ourselves permission to make a few mistakes along the way. You know, Stephen Fishman and I wrote a book called Unbundling the Enterprise, and we talk about sort of characteristics that we've observed at these leading digital companies and how they've been applied in, you know, more legacy enterprises and so on. And a huge part of that is just the willingness to be experimental, but to be smart and experimental, like make small bets and make a lot of them and then know which ones are paying off. So and this will happen too, like if an organization makes a giant bet on a particular vendor stack or on a particular area of the business and it doesn't pay off, that's a lot more egg on the face. So I would just encourage companies to definitely be experimental. You're going to have to be experimental. And there is an experiential learning aspect to AI because it's so different that if you want to build the muscle in the organization to be fluent and productive with AI, like you have to be working on it. So I think you sort of teased at the outset, like should companies wait? They should not be waiting entirely because this is coming, and you do need to learn this new muscle for it. But I think, you know, just try and make the bets a little bit smaller so that so that you can learn more quickly that way, and so that the consequences aren't so catastrophic if it doesn't go right. Don't put all the eggs in one basket. You know, a lot of use a lot of cliches here.
Yeah, I mean that certainly makes sense, and I guess maybe to go even further with that, when we're talking about making small bets, and I certainly think when you're going through muscle memory, you don't want to invest a lot. As an organization, if you're developing that muscle memory and you're thinking about obviously technical staff that could do this and who may want to be interested in doing it, I guess there might be a situation where you realize to develop that muscle memory, you actually don't have the right setup, the right team, the right architecture, whatever we want to call it, to be able to do that. And again, going back to every company is at different maturity level within technology. Consulting is one way. I do know companies are going, hey, let's just hire a consulting company and come build this POC. Obviously, that comes with it some risks. Let's go hire some people and just throw them at it and let's see what they come up with. I mean, all those seem like different starting points. We're going to say good or bad, just different. But if you are in the boat where, again, we said there might be a gap, you don't have those advanced skills, it is a business-driven thing, where do you think that small bet in terms of helping your team gap up and address some of those, you know, projects themselves? Where does that sit? Is it consulting? Is it hiring outside? Is it just training?
This is a tricky one because I think what we haven't yet seen is sort of this post-AI landscape for enterprises. And I think people are probably overestimating how different it's going to look than what it looks like today. So if you look at sort of organizational, like the underlying system architectures or organizational designs, like we've gone through 30 years now of post-web, and, you know, things are not horrendously different. And there's been multiple evolutions of technology along the way. But I think the people that are going to be most useful are the ones who are able to be future looking enough to understand where all this stuff is going to fit in the landscape that you have today, and not just assume that you're just going to come in with some new template that's going to wipe everything else away. But so that's a hard one. So that really is a blend of, most organizations probably have those people in there today. It should really be, you know, if you're going to, like, it's useful to get good consultants who are be able to share and have been deeply embedded in other organizations to see what works and so on. But just farming out your whole strategy to an external team, they're just not going to have that domain knowledge and understanding of your organization. So it's a tricky one. But I mean, what we've found over in AI adoption overall is that, you know, it's corny, right? Like getting to know yourself, like actually saying, what's going to be the foundation for this stuff in the future? Well, it's going to be the core systems that run our business, the core data that houses our customer and stakeholder information, like all that stuff that's foundational is going to be the baseline for what you're going to be doing with AI, which again is why the people that know that stuff are really important. And then to understand how that weaves into the solutions that you're going to be building in AI. Like a lot of the reasons I think that early AI experiments have failed is because they're kind of taking the vanilla Gen AI stuff and just trying to let it loose in the organization when it's untethered to the data that provides the context that's needed to ground those AI solutions. And it's unable to affect anything in the business because it's sort of disconnected from the systems where the action happens. So I think when I've been working with organizations, a lot of what I've been saying is the actual longest term investments you can make right now are focusing on getting your own core systems ready in a way that allows them to plug and play more easily with the new tools. Because the tools are going to, like all the stuff that was blowing our minds today in the Gen AI space will be obsolete in a year, 6 months, right? Like we've already seen so many iterations of where we started with ChatGPT at the end of 2022 and where we sit now. So really getting the foundation right is good investment. And I think that's why, empowering those people that really understand that in your organization would be a good step.
Absolutely. And I guess when you think about these technology, booms, these evolutions, it is harder from a technical basis early. I mean, just tools haven't matured. When it comes to AI, and obviously a lot of vendors are still working on their tools, the software companies are quickly adding AI capability. All these things are happening. And it is a fast-moving train. It feels like as soon as we hear something developing, there's the next thing. When you're looking at from an enterprise standpoint, you're hearing your vendors tell you, oh yeah, the next thing's coming. We're going to have this. We're going to have that. And then you hear about all the changes that are happening in all aspects of AI. You have to start making some decisions, even within those small bets, to go, hey, this is what we're going to decide on now, and we're going to chart forward. When it comes to tooling and all these different things and the evolution from making it easier for these enterprises, it sounds like you can't wait anyway. So we have that, but finding the right muscle memory to work on from a skills perspective, because we do know some of this should be simpler in 2 to 3 years, but you can't wait. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg, I guess, when it comes to where you specifically try to flex some of those muscles. Are there particular areas that you'd say should be priority for companies?
Well, I think a big priority, and maybe this goes back to something that's more foundational competency than it is, platform or anything like that, is you got to be like, this is sort of separate from AI, but is a critical dependency. Your organization has to be very adaptable. You have to be able to change very quickly. And then the solutions that you put in are going to have to be compatible with the ability to change quickly. So I get, I've been in the software space a long time. All of us vendors would love for companies to just implement us and leave it there forever and use us for everything, right? This is the name of the game. So that's an incentive for organizations. But you have to be careful as the implementer to just make sure that the solutions you're putting in are amenable to change, either within themselves and evolving. You can evaluate organizations, how continuously they're innovating their solutions and how non-disruptive that would be as you have implemented them, but also how they can play in a heterogeneous world. Like, if your solutions are closed off and lock you in, it's a dangerous place to play. So I think that what we know, the more volatile environments are, then the more heterogeneous they're going to be. Using cloud as an example, because we talked about it earlier, right? We've seen organizations want to go fully with one of the hyperscalers or another, right? And they'll make a decision to say, we're going to go all Azure or GCP or Amazon. It took Netflix a decade to migrate to AWS, right? And so like there can be an illusion around like, well, it's tempting to be like, oh, I'm just going to go with this one company and they're going to be my AI partner. They're going to do everything, but it's never a reality. So I think recognizing that the solutions you put in are going to have to play nice with all the other pieces around them, making sure that they're able to be they're adaptable and you're able to change frequently, and then having the competency within your organization to change frequently, like there's no question, because who knows what comes after AI. It might be more rapidly evolving than whatever we have now.
That's actually a great point. I think people are trying to avoid looking too far down the road as they're grappling with what they're doing now. And I guess maybe just final question, because you're out there in the field, you're talking to people, you're seeing this firsthand. Companies that are succeeding, within adopting AI in some capacity, are there some clear markers when you look back on those use cases and you go, there's a couple of things they've all done that kind of make sense, that aligns up for their success?
Yeah. So we talked about a couple of them, but just to sort of sum it up, focus, right? Putting the business goals first and then follow through. So like being able to make sure that if you want to get success out of this thing, it's not just about saying it's AI, so everyone's going to use it, like following through with the training, with the communication, with the marketing of it, with the measurement of the results. That's definitely like number one. And I think accepting that it's okay if the first use case is not something that's going to blow everybody's minds. Like I think that, and this is something I've observed over all the different eras of technology innovation. When you want to transform your organization and move to a new way of doing things or a new approach and so on, like you do need those big hitter, high value use cases, but they usually come after you get some low hanging fruit, and because it's much better to trip and fall on a low hanging fruit easy case than it is to have some massively critical initiative. So I would say find the low hanging fruit, give your self permission to like scrap some of those experiments up front. And some of them will yield things. And the way things go anyway, everything grows from a seed anyway. So some of those even smaller wins can sometimes be turned into bigger examples. So and we're already seeing that, even like some of the foundational components, services that are built for a seemingly simplistic use case that can then quickly get used into much broader context.
Absolutely. Matt, fantastic conversation, fantastic insights and advice. If somebody does want to learn more how they can improve on their AI adoption, some of those pieces, and maybe a follow-up question or just a better resource, what are some of those things when it comes to you?
Yeah, Boomi.com shows all things Boomi, and we're very much, I'm focused on these things. Our company is focused on really lowering the barrier of entry for getting business value out of AI. So encourage you to go there. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll see everyone at the virtual and physical events.
There you go. Matt, thanks for the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Amir.
Absolutely. All right. That's it for this episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, I think we covered a lot of enterprise AI adoption, some of what you need to do to be successful, things that are not going to go well, and how do you recover from them. Start small. Also, pay attention to the right people, the right resources, the right use cases. A lot of different pieces of advice in this from Matt. So whoever is out there who is interested in improving their enterprise AI adoption strategy, this is a great episode for you. So please share this episode out, and I would love to see more people also getting involved in this discussion. We need to talk more about what's going right and what's going wrong. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.